Hello, hello. This is Niran Kaur, and you are witnessing the first half of our superfood support call where we get in our body and do some wild flow. It is March 14th, and today we're going to focus on our hips. And so I want to give credit to some of what I'm going to teach you to a movement called primal movement that I've been following for a little while. And it goes along with my sense that the more primal and the more we can return to our truest nature, each of us individually, then the healthier and more vital we can be. And so part of that for me is being able to get down on the floor regularly. We were birthed and put onto the floor, many of us, to learn to crawl. And so that's where our hips knew exactly what to do. And so the more we can visit that and return to that, even as we age, because what happens is when we don't return to that, then we lose track of remembering how to be comfortably on the floor and how to be in our body on the floor or on the ground. And there's a lot of reason for why that happens as we age, and there's also a lot of reason for keeping that as a part of our health regimen. And most of our ability to get down on the floor and up again has to do with inflammation, patterning, just not keeping it alive within us, and then strength and flexibility. And strength and flexibility are usually related to inflammation, how the fascia move through your body, because your eyebrows are connected to your heels. There's no separation. And so when we think of just the hips, then we're really isolating in a way that's not helpful for us. And when we think of the hips and the pelvic floor and the low back and the belly connected to everything that we move, everything that we do, then you start to see how your neck feels is likely related to your hips, is likely related to your feet, and your knees in between. There's no separation. And so let's get into our body. Now, typically we do a little meditation and we step into what we might call wild flow. So this is going to be a little bit of a combination of how I like to strengthen and also using wild flow techniques and primal movement techniques into the wild flow strengthening process. So this is not covered well in 20 minutes, but I want you to just get a snapshot. Okay, here we go. So on the floor, many of us in this group are already on the floor. So if you're just watching, I welcome you to explore how it feels to either be on the floor on your knees. If that's not accessible to you, you can begin to be on your knees like this. You can begin to be on your knees like this. You can just explore. This is the part of wild flow where you get to experiment with your own body. Notice whether you can come onto your heels, whether your toes, if you can see my toes, whether they like to spread in this way, whether it feels very hard on your ankles to sit this way. So in typical wild flow fashion, there's no forcing of this. This is your beginning exploration. So if it's hard to bend back on your knees, then don't. And so stay up more in a tabletop position like this. You can adjust how hard this is based on what it feels like in your knees, your ankles, and now your hips. I'll show you how this is related to your hips. So if you're up onto your hands now, I also realize that there may be issues with wrists. So again, we're not going to be here long. Play with putting your hands like this. Play with coming up onto something. For instance, I use a bench sometimes, so that would take the pressure off. You can use a chair, you can use a couch, takes the pressure off of your wrists. Now, getting into the hips, here's the key. When you're, find a comfortable position, whether that's leaning on a bench or sitting back on your heels, find your comfortable position. Now, begin to imagine that your carpet is being pulled apart by your knees, but they don't move. So what you're beginning to do is open up and strengthen all of your muscles in your buttocks, across your hips. And so continue, and then you're playing in WildFlow fashion with moving those knees, pressing your heels down into the floor and pulling the carpet or pulling your mat out away from each other, but your knees never move. So here, you're pulling away and you're coming down. So if this is a position that you're comfortable with or have been, then you can make it harder by moving down, exploring into the edges of inflammation, the edges of restriction, all of your edges, breathing into them, and noticing if you can activate the muscles deep in your hips that open space in your low back. At the same time, you can notice what your pelvic floor muscles wish to do. So I welcome you to close your eyes and explore these muscles. They may be muscles you've never activated before, ever, consciously. So breathe and play with them. You may notice that your thighs want to take over, but this is bringing all of your focus to your back, to your backside, to your hamstrings, to the muscles deep into your buttocks and hips that rotate your femurs, your trochanters in your hip sockets in. We're so used to rotating them out. Sitting rotates them out. We spend so much time sitting that we don't experience the power that our backside has to support us. And so you can begin to, if you're feeling like this is too easy, then you can lift your hands up and you can just focus on the muscles of your backside while you rock. Rock into your squat or into your down towards your heels and come up. And now you can play with twisting in that same rock, because that uses the muscles of your hips. Notice what your pelvic floor wishes to do. Notice if you can look forward and rock. And then switch sides. Now, from here, begin to push one hip out to the side. So you're still pushing the knees down into the carpet, but you're reaching that tailbone back at an angle, pulling your knees apart, pushing your feet into the floor, and stretching through one hip. You can do this with a bench. You can do this with a wall. Now begin to really activate the hamstring and the buttocks muscles of that hip. And then move to the other side. Stretch into the hip. Notice the pelvic floor muscles, what they wish to do. Really let those buttocks muscles and the hamstrings activate. It's a combination of stretching and strengthening. Breathe and explore those muscles. And now switch to the other side. And if it feels right for you, lift that hand up to your chest into the same side hip. Same side hip. And now twist your torso and then come back and breathe. You can really feel it. Activate your buttocks, activate your hamstrings, and believe it or not, these will open up your hips. These will begin to repattern ways that we close down the hips. And then switch to the other side. And stretch into the hip. And lift up through the hamstring. Allow the quadriceps to relax so that all your movement is coming through your back side. So can you see? Yeah, you got it, Marie. So I'm stretching out toward my left. My left hand is up at my chest, and I'm looking straight ahead. And if you wild flow in these positions, you'll begin to really notice where it feels good to stretch and strengthen through your low back, through your pelvic floor, and through your hips. And there's so much that you can do here. Next week, I'll show you a standing series for the hips using the same muscles. But take your time because this opens up, this brings light into places that have not seen a lot of light. In our culture, with so much sitting that we do, these muscles they don't have any reason to activate unless we give them reason to. And the way in which we're taught to lift weights or lift things or be in our body, it doesn't prioritize this back chain in a creative, dynamic, non-linear way. And so again, I want to give credit to Bam Lionheart and the Primal Movement effort for first opening my eyes to this. I always like to give credit where credit's due. So I will put a link to their work in the show notes. And if you want to hear more, I would love to share more with you. Take some time to integrate. One way that is really amazing to integrate is to put your feet up on a couch or anything that brings a 90-degree angle to your hips and low back, because then your sacrum is flat on the floor, your shoulder blades are flat on the floor, and you can really integrate that way and relax through your hips and through your low back. And so in this position, this is a decompressing position. This can be very restorative when done throughout the day for your hips, for your hamstrings, for your low back, for your pelvic floor. And you would just focus on letting go through your hips, letting your feet relax, your hips relax, your knees relax on the couch, and breathe. It's also a good time to reflect on any emotions that may be flowing as a result of activating and bringing light to some pretty dark places. Also, an excellent time to thank your body for all that it allows you to experience, and strengthen your intuition on creating a more intimate relationship with it. And it's amazing to journal as well, journaling after. Bea says goodbye.